Hey guys, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. My name is Brian.
And my name is Maggie.
And we interview Asian entrepreneurs around the world to amplify their voices and empower Asians to pursue their dreams and goals.
We believe that each person has a message and a unique story from their entrepreneurial journey that they can share with all of us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. He is Justin Kan. Justin Kan is the co-founder of Twitch, the world's biggest live streaming platform. He's been a serial entrepreneur and technology investor at Y Combinator and his new fund, Goat Capital. Justin is also the host of The Quest, a podcast that brings the world stories of the people who struggle to find their own purpose, made it in the outside world, and then found deeper meaning beyond success. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're super excited to have you on. Justin, let's hear about your story. What was your upbringing like?
What was my Asian upbringing like?
Yeah.
I was, it was good. My parents were very supportive of me, and they were, my dad was born here in the U.S. He's pretty Americanized. He's full on American, didn't speak Chinese. My mom was an immigrant. She came here from Malaysia. She's ethnically Chinese, but came here from Malaysia when she was 17 years old, immigrated to Seattle. And so, they've really valued education, which was probably not surprising. Sent me to private school and really made sure that I studied hard. And my mom was like, at one point I was failing math, I think in the fourth grade or something. She was just like, or second grade. And she was like, this is not going to happen to my kid. Right. So she would write these problems out, like math problems in different colors, like colored pencils or whatever, and call them color problems. And that was like her bait to get me to do extra homework. And so that was, that was kind of the early days. And from my parent, my mom, especially, I learned the value of hard work and, a number of other things that probably helped me later on. She was very much like, she had this very team mentality. So I have two younger brothers, and my brothers and I would get this list of chores to do. She'd be like, okay, you have to do everything on this list. Otherwise no one gets to play Nintendo, right? Like everyone, it was like a group task list, right? It wasn't divided by, person. And so that kind of gave us, like, we hated it at the time, but really got this like team vibe on like how to execute something, and so that was kind of it for the early days. My mom had a scarcity mindset, which I think a lot of Asian immigrants do, or immigrants in general. And so, even though we weren't bad off at all, like, she was able to send me and my brothers to private school, and we had a pretty decent house, and she always felt like there was a sense of like there wasn't enough. And so I think from the early days, that really gave me a drive to go out and make money and make more and be successful. And when I was younger, I also, I was kind of an outsider. I wasn't a popular kid. I felt like an outsider among my peers. And I think that really drove me later on as well to try to be successful as like a way of proving something about myself, like, oh, I can, if I become successful, if I become an entrepreneur and make it, then I'll finally get the approval I always wanted. I didn't know it as that at the time, but I think I had this deep drive to succeed because of it.
Wow, that's so powerful. And I feel the same way too. I personally have always been the odd kid. I stand out a lot. I say the wrong things all the time. But for me, the driving force behind entrepreneurship is to fit in as well. And, the reason behind Asian Hustle Network is more of a internal reason. It's because I felt so lonely. I felt like I couldn't relate to anyone. So I want to build a community where if anyone else feels the same way I do, I don't want them to be alone. That's the reason behind Asian Hustle Network. And kind of curious too, you mentioned the scarcity mindset. What was your parents' thoughts when you were age 22, 23, starting Justin TV instead of getting a conventional job? What were their thought process like when they're like, Justin, you're not going to get a job, you're going to be an entrepreneur? What's going on here?
Yeah, my mom was an entrepreneur, so she was actually quite supportive. It wasn't, I think she cared a lot about my education. I went to Yale, and after that though, she was very supportive of me becoming an entrepreneur, to her credit. And so, I think she wasn't like a traditional tiger mom in that she was saying, oh, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. She was much more like, whatever you do, you should try to do it your best and had a very high standard for, your work ethic. And then when I said I want to be an entrepreneur, actually wasn't for Justin TV, which is a company that eventually turned into Twitch. At first, it was another company that we started right out of college called Kiko, which is a web calendar. And so we decided, okay, well, we're going to start this company and we're going to return the bonus checks we got from these jobs that we're going to go to after college. And my friend Emmett and I were going to start this company, and she was supportive of it. So it was good to have that.
Love that.
So while you were, starting Justin TV, you live streamed every part of your life. How did you know how to set boundaries between what you wanted to live stream in terms of like your personal life and what you wanted to make public?
Well, the idea for Justin TV was back in 2007, before there was an iPhone or Periscope, or I guess they shut down Periscope now, but like Instagram Live or anything like that. It was really before people were using data on their cell phones very much. So we had to figure out all this technology to build this platform to let us stream from the mobile, like a mobile, what was effectively like our own mobile device that we made, to the internet, and then out to people on their computers to watch it. And, when we thought of it entirely almost as a technology problem, because we were engineers, so we were like, oh, how do we build this thing? But we never thought about like, what's the show going to be? Like, how are we going to make an interesting show out of my life? Number one, or like, what are the social implications of having this stream on all the time? It's kind of an experiment, and we really only thought about the technology part of it. So when we launched the show, so I think March 17th of 2007, we launched it, and then, it kind of went crazy on the internet because it was this weird, crazy thing that nobody expected or heard of before. This guy streaming his life to the internet 24/7. It wasn't actually 24/7 because the site went down all the time, kind of like the early days of Twitter or something. But, we tried to do 24/7. So, the impact on my life was just, it was like chaos. We were trying to run around, do stuff all the time, like interesting stuff, whatever. It would be like going and meeting people or talking to other startups or seeing whatever like event was in town, like going to whatever like event was going on, or like any event, basically just to try to generate content. Mm-hmm. And people were, but it was exhausting. It was exhausting. And then like it started to get, I started getting pranked like all the time, like various forums of like people who had nothing better to do. So they'd like call the cops or wherever I was at, or like order pizza, like pizzas to like wherever I was. And it was just like, it was kind of hilarious in retrospect, but at the time it was quite stressful. And so we really didn't think about any of the implications of like how it would work or like setting boundaries. Because the idea of it was this gimmick of like, okay, let's just go out and try it 24/7,
Yeah. Wait, tell us a story about that outfit, what it looked like. We saw your TikTok. I think you posted like yesterday or 2 days ago about your early days, your homo days. Tell us about that story. How'd you look? And
yeah, so it was this hat cam, basically it was this 24/7 live stream, and was wearing this camera, and it was like mounted to a like baseball cap on the side. There was this camera that was it was an analog camera, actually, kind of like one of those early GoPro cameras. And then it was attached to a backpack that had like this, what was effectively like a computer with all these cell phone data modems in it, and a huge ass battery, like 20 pounds of batteries. Because they had not really made lithium ion battery technology to the level it is today, with mobile devices. And so I was just carrying around this backpack all the time, and I was, broadcasting from this hat cam. It was pretty obvious that there was this camera thing attached to my head. And so, people would notice it. It wasn't the coolest look, but that's, it is what it is. It was kind of hilarious.
I love that. I love how committed you are to that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a stunt for sure. It was not the most, like at the end of the day, the content we were creating was not super interesting, but there was something there that was a precursor to everything that happened on social media. I really did feel like if you gave people access into watching someone's life, they would be interested. People are fundamentally interested in other people for the most part. And so, I think that's really developed with social media stars and influencers and people really wanting to see, the real authentic side of the people they look up to.
Yeah. And on that topic, personal branding is so big today. Like everyone is trying to kind of increase their personal brand. At that time when you were starting Justin TV, how big was personal branding and what did you kind of learn from it? Because, nowadays when people post YouTube videos of their personal brand, they just post highlights, but you were posting like every bit of your life.
Yeah, well, the highlights are a better way to go from a branding perspective, but also from a making it entertaining, right? Like stories, Instagram stories and Snapchat stories is a good example of, kind of pieces of someone's real life, but they're mostly just posting the highlights. They're posting, 30 seconds or a minute of every day, not 24/7, right? Not 24 hours of a day. And the problem is like most of the time in the day for most people, in fact, for everyone, including people who are celebrities that seem like they're leading glamorous lives, most of their day is boring. They're on their phone, they're on email, they're just sleeping or whatever, so it's not, the highlights are much better and a much better way to go. And we didn't really figure that out from a product perspective. But I think there was something there, some core insight there that everybody has some things that are interesting every day that they can zero in on.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I noticed about you as well is that you're such a strong early adopter of all the social media platforms. We're watching your interviews when Snapchat came out, and you're like, hold on, I want to stream this real quick. And we see you a lot in Clubhouse right now too. So what are your thoughts on being an early adopter for these type of social media platforms, and how can that benefit someone's personal brand?
You know what's interesting is that I don't actually think I'm an early adopter because didn't really use Instagram, probably still don't. Twitter, I remember I signed up in 2007, early 2007, and I was one of the top 1,000 accounts with Justin TV before we, before when we launched Justin TV. Like it was just in San Francisco, just like, tech people. And then I didn't really use it until 2009 for myself, so it was like 2 years where Twitter was growing, but I didn't use it at all. And then with Snapchat, I had signed up, 2013 or whatever, and saw stories and didn't get it. And then it was only, I think in 2015 or late 2015 that I heard about DJ Khaled getting lost on his jet ski or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I want to see what's going on. And so that's when I started creating startup content on Snapchat. And then, Clubhouse is another good example. I had signed up for Clubhouse in April, I think. I was probably one of the first, 1,000 users, and I didn't get it. And then only finally this last week when it's blowing up, or 2 weeks ago, I started using it again. And TikTok, another great example. I mean, there's a billion people on TikTok now, or hundreds of millions or whatever. So, now I'm starting to use TikTok. I don't think I'm an early adopter, but what I do think I have is that I'm pretty creative, and I love experimenting with these platforms once I kind of get it, which usually takes a couple of years, or it's too long. It takes too long. And I love experimenting and creating authentic content. I think I do create content that people connect with because it's very, that's pretty authentic. And because I don't really need to be, I'm not good enough looking or polished enough to do something that's more of an influencer style where they're making great Instagram videos or whatever. I'm just some fucking guy. And so I love to make content that's just some guy doing whatever I'm doing, and being as authentic as possible about it. And I think there's something to that. That's, I guess, one tip for people out there. I think people really resonate with authenticity. And then the second thing I'll say is, I think it's never too late, right? I think, with Twitter, for example, I really started being more popular on Twitter in 2018, when I started, and that was really late, right? I was I think I had 20,000 followers in 2018, and then it, maybe I've got 110,000 now or something like that. So it's still not, I mean, we're not talking a lot, but it's very targeted among a certain type of people, startups and people who are entrepreneurs, stuff like that. And I think people, it wasn't too late. It's just really about the content that I was creating about startups and wellness and things that resonate with a specific community. And I think, that's if you look at people who blew up on Instagram, a lot of them were 2016, 2017, well after the platform was very broadly adopted. Mm-hmm. And so I think that people often think, or I've often thought myself, oh, I've missed the boat, but I actually think the case is since so much, all these networks are growing so much and people's usage of them is growing so much that, you're never too late. Yeah. To, as long as you have the right kind of angle of content that resonates with people.
Yeah. I really like the mentality a lot too. Mm-hmm. That's really strong. I do want to point out one more thing. So Justin's actually really handsome, by the way. He's just being humble.
I appreciate that.
It's true. And I also really like that mentality, because you do have people who think like, oh, I have to be an early adopter. But if it is not too late if you joined late, because you have all the fundamentals down already. You have everyone who like tested out and tried to see like what is popular on that social media platform and what works. And then you already have all the, basics down. And so that's a really good mentality. So when you switched from Justin TV to Twitch, what was that transition like? And, what was
it? So with Justin TV, we're a platform for anyone to broadcast live video. We had pivoted from, I was doing my own show, and then my show sucked. So we were like, okay, let's make a platform for anyone to broadcast. And so we did that in 2007. And then for the next 4 years, we built Justin TV, and it became a pretty big site, like probably a top 250 site in the world. And people were streaming all sorts of live content. It was kind of like, like the type of content that was on YouNow or Instagram Live, or just people, whatever, like people would be chatting with each other, or people would be streaming themselves playing video games, or people would be streaming, like sports event or something like that. And so people were kind of streaming whatever they wanted. And then we basically stopped growing. And so we were like, what do we do? We're a pretty small company. It was about 25 people at the time, had no idea what we should do. And at that point, decided, hey, we need to figure out something to pivot to. And so we had two ideas. With the four founders of the company, myself, Michael Seibel, who's now the CEO of Combinator, Emmett Shear, who's the CEO of Twitch, and my friend, our other friend, Kyle Vogt, who is the CTO and co-founder of Cruise, self-driving car startup. We were at the time just all, probably in our mid to late 20s, and trying to figure out, okay, what do we pivot to? And we were sitting in this room and we came up with two ideas. One was, Emmett decided, he was like, I love the gaming streaming. We should just go all in on gaming. This was very counterintuitive. Gaming was not thought of as like a big content category at the time. This was 2011. And then actually 2010, probably like the end of 2010. And our other Michael really was like, hey, mobile is going to be a huge thing. We should go all in on mobile video. And so, there were some right ideas in there, but we couldn't agree on what to do. So we decided we'd try both. We'll work on both things in the same company, and we'll see what one works after 6 months. And so it was a horrible way to do this pivot, but we decided to do it. And it turns out the gaming thing kind of grew and grew and grew against the benchmarks that we set. So Emmett and our COO at the time, Kevin Lin, who was a friend of ours from college, started working on this gaming site, part of Justin TV, like the gaming section. And they would go out to people in the nascent gaming video community. There was a lot on YouTube, but there wasn't as much on live streaming, and try to get people to create live content and ask them what do they want, and so, people, a lot of these content creators, they were streaming, they're professional gamers, or they were, very entertaining gamers who just love streaming, and they wanted to stream, but they wanted to do more of it, and they want to get paid. So we decided we'd build a partner program so they could get paid from it. And then they wanted to figure out how to get more viewers. So we would figure out ways to help them get more viewers. And that's basically what we did, was just talk to them and iterate. And eventually, that turned into Twitch. Wow. It was a pretty amazing story. But Emmett and Kevin really deserve all the credit, because they were the ones really working on it primarily internally. And then eventually we pivoted more and more of the company's resources to them,
Mm-hmm. That's an awesome story. And, congratulations on being acquired by Amazon. Mm-hmm. And I want to focus the shift post Twitch. I feel like post Twitch, we're posting more content on Medium. We're reading a lot of your articles. It seems like you went to different phases of your life in different years, Yeah. At that point, it was like experimental, start small, think big. And then I felt like you went to a period where you were exploring your own potential. Like, what else can I do out there? What other companies can I start? And I feel like the last year was more focused on self-improvement, like 2019, 2020, whereas I felt like you were deep in reflection a lot.
Yeah.
I went to Startup Grind. That's where I saw you for the first time. I got to the event early. I sat in the front stage. I was literally 10 feet away from you, but I'm pretty sure you didn't see me at all. I was like, well, I was listening to you. I noticed your progression throughout the years.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that reflection point like? when you were starting your self-improvement part, was it because you're feeling a lot of stress in your companies where you're like, how I feel inside is often how I reflect outside? What was that point where you're like, okay, why is self-improvement so important? And what is the theme for 2021? I'm kind of curious for that as well.
Yeah, so that's a good observation. I have been through these different phases and in my life, and in the early days of the startup, I just really wanted to make it, and then kind of making it in 2014 and selling it. Then I was, doing some content creation on writing mediums, like you said, and writing posts, like longer form content, but really still in the like startup world. And then, played around on Snapchat and had a lot of fun with that. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start another company, really like still needing to prove myself in the world. Like the $1 billion company wasn't enough. I was like, oh, I want to make more. I want to build a bigger company because I had friends who built, $10 billion companies or whatever. And so, had a fairly, I would say, unhealthy obsession with that. And then eventually started another company, and that company was incredibly stressful. And so at that point, a couple of years ago, really started to realize, oh, it's not, my external circumstances are driving a lot of how I feel every day. And that is weird because kind of objectively, like things are like pretty good for me. And so how do I stabilize what's going on? How do I feel good every day, regardless of what's happening in the outside world? And that's when I started really becoming interested in the self-improvement train. And so that was investing in a lot of different things that were, ways to kind of grow personally. And I never been into personal improvement before, at least not like in that explicit way. I'd always been curious and loved learning, but I didn't think, oh, people could improve at, whatever it was that they I thought people were kind of baked when they were 18, right? They would just be the way that they were since they were a kid. And then or since they were like kind of a young adult, that's like what they were going to be like for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I never thought, oh, I can actually improve who I am. And then I had a number of experiences that like kind of broke me open and was like, made me see like, oh, I actually have a choice on how I want to show up in the world. And so, first was like really drinking ayahuasca for the first time, sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony and experiencing that the idea that I had always done everything for the approval of the outside world. And that if I didn't have to make that choice anymore. And so, for me, that led to, okay, I'm going to start a meditation habit, doing that. It led to, exercising very regularly, like trying to exercise every day. It led to investing in like a gratitude practice, gratitude journal. I quit drinking alcohol. And so there was just a number of things that helped me, kind of improve. And I realized through a couple of books that I read, including James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, that, improvement wasn't really about getting to some goal. It was about creating a framework by which I would like make small incremental steps every day, incremental reinforcement steps every day, right? So, every day sit in meditation, even if I just do it for 2 minutes, right? Every day I want to exercise, even if I just exercise for 5 minutes. And so that really helped me get on the path of self-improvement, And so the last couple of years I've been really dedicated to that. And this year, I would say, maybe in the last couple of months, I've come to realize like, oh, I want to focus on doing the things that are bring my joy to the world. Like I express my inner joy. And so a lot of that is around, I love investing because it's a way to learn about new topics and new ideas. I love mentoring people. Investing helps me support that, so with my new fund, Go Capital, that's like a kind of investing. It helps me fulfill and activate some of these things that bring me joy. And then I love creating content, which is why I have this new podcast about the journey I've been on and other people's journeys. And I'm launching a YouTube channel. It's never too late. 15 years or whatever after YouTube started, or 16 years, but it's never too late. Like I'm just having fun with it and trying to do the things that activate my joy.
Yeah, I love that a lot.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how you talk about gratitude a lot. And we know that you believe in showing gratitude as a way of achieving happiness. Can you talk about your gratitude journal and, what you kind of put in it?
I guess before we get there, I'm kind of curious too, because I think we read through your Medium articles and there's an article you wrote, it's 13 minutes a read or something. In the bottom part, you're saying that you used to be so against therapy, and you're like, I don't want any of that. So what changed in terms of like, hey, maybe this is a great option for me because it's so relatable to the Asian culture. You know, there's a huge stigma against mental health. And even nowadays, running Asian Hustle Network has been extremely stressful on my side, where I talk to my parents like, hey, I might need therapy. And mom's like, you're not crazy. What are you trying to do? You know, I just want to hear from your point of view, because I know like where we are and how you used to be with therapy is very similar to how I feel right now about therapy. And I just wanted to highlight that real quick.
Yeah. You know, what's ironic is my mom is she had multiple careers. She was a programmer, and then she was a real estate agent, mortgage broker, and real estate investor. And then now she actually is a marriage and family therapist. And my mom was super into therapy and always encouraged me to go. And I was like, no, I don't want to, you know, because I had a lot of conflict with my mom, you know, when I was growing up, and then when I was a young adult, because I always felt like even though she was different from a traditional tiger mom, she was a very micromanaging, you know, kind of personality. And so, ironically, she was the one who was telling me I should go to therapy. And I was like, no, I don't want to, I don't need that. And it was really like most of these things, you know, adopting meditation or therapy, they came from breaking points where I was like very stressed out and looking for some salvation. And so in one of the companies I had early on, you know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I reached this point where I was very, very stressed and I didn't know how to cope. And so out of desperation, I realized that I was burned out. And so I went to start seeing a therapist then. And that was very helpful to me to kind of learn some tools to deal with my circumstances, you know, my present moment circumstances.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean, I'm glad you did that. You know, I think my form of therapy right now is like, I need more sleep. You know, feeling too stressed, my body's just like, okay, just sleep it off and take it day by day. But
yeah, so that's, you know, I recognize that, because I mean, that can be from sleep or anything. I used to have all these coping mechanisms to deal with my stress, right? Something wasn't going on well in the outside world in my company. I would, watch a season of Netflix, or I'd go to sleep, or I would get drunk. You know, I drank a lot. And so those were all ways to like cope with my situation, right? Like in a way to like, but they were all forms of escapism, right? They were forms of saying, oh, instead of being present with whatever you're experiencing, like maybe you feel guilt about the way things went or what you promised your investors and you're not delivering, or maybe you feel anxiety about what's going to happen in the future. Or maybe you feel anger because, you know, a supplier just, you know, fired you, or like a, you know, vendor or a customer just fired you, or whatever. You know, instead of being able to sit with that and those emotions, you oftentimes were looking for escapes, right? That was who I was anyways. Mm-hmm. And what really helped me was figuring out ways to just be present with that experience of whatever it was. You know, if I feel guilt, being able to say, oh, I feel guilty, and identify that and sit with that. And by doing that, let it pass, right? Like take the signal of whatever the experience is, which oftentimes those emotions are usually signals of, so, you know, you're not feeling like things are going the right way and you need to make a change, which is a valid signal. But oftentimes we turn them into ruminations and moods because we just continually fixate on them, because we don't let them, we're not able to sit with them and let them clear. So instead we like push it down by, you know, be like, oh, that was a horrible day and I dealt with all these things, so I'm going to go get faded. And then you do that. And then the next morning, like you still have those problems and you still have anxiety, and you know, maybe it's even amplified because of the alcohol. And then what are you going to do? So for me, a lot of these tools were about helping me sit with those emotional states and then let them pass.
Yeah, that's extremely relatable, I think, to a lot of us too. More than you ever imagined, Justin. Like, we had those moments where at the time we didn't know each other yet, or I knew of you, we didn't know us. just reading through your journals and whatnot. And I've been following you for years now. Like, honestly, you were one of my heroes that
Thanks, man.
Never thought I could talk to right now. It's kind of amusing. And it's really amazing. So whatever you wrote, whatever you went through, like I could feel your emotions, you know, and I wanted to highlight in this podcast and talk about those things.
Yeah, it's true. I think 2 years ago when I remember Brian was talking about, you know, I would love to meet Justin Kahn one day. And it was just like,
I think I saw your billboard or something. I was driving around the Bay and I saw like Justin Kahn billboard. I'm like, I want to meet this guy one day. I'm like, I don't know how, but I want to meet this guy one day.
Yeah. And even when we started Asian Hustle Network, we started meeting people who were, actually connected to you. And we're just like, wow, I can't believe we know people who know Justin.
But I'm too shy to ask them to introduce me to Justin. So I'm going to DM Justin randomly myself.
That's bold. You did it, So here we are, we're meeting, and I'm glad to connect with you.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so, you started so many companies, and I'm sure it got easier over time. Did you ever feel fear and anxiety when you were first starting out? And if so, how did you overcome that feeling?
Yeah. So it didn't get easier over time, actually, because you can just look at the last company I started, which failed. Right. So, clearly my hit rate has been okay, it's been good enough, but it's, with startups, I think there's a lot of things you can do to probably de-risk them, and maybe I should be doing more of those things, but I wouldn't say it's gotten easier for me. The thing I will say is that I felt anxiety and fear constantly, even post being successful, because then the stakes are higher, the reputation's higher. Now I really need to make it work because this is the one, I'm running out of time, whatever it is. There's always things to make you anxious. I had a lot of imposter syndrome in the beginning, and I think that's very common among many of my friends, including ones who are very, very successful, decacorn founders. And, that's part of being human is we only are aware of our own internal experience. We aren't aware of other people's experience. So it's very easy for us to project on other people and say, oh, that guy knows everything. He knows what's up. He's so good at all these things. He's great. He's probably so confident. And for us to be like, wow, I'm like a loser. I don't know anything about this. I'm new. I don't have any experience. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to fail. Because you don't have the whole story of what's going on with other people. And, that's especially exacerbated with today with social media, where everyone's just posting all their highlights. They're like all this great shit that's happening, and you don't see the full story, right? You only see your own full story. So, I encourage people to really, it's easy to say, and it's hard to internalize, it's easy to know that conceptually, but not to feel it. But everybody goes through that experience of being, not being confident in what they're doing. They're new to it, and they're just figuring it out. And I have friends, I've had a conversation with, even this week, had a conversation with a friend who I look up to. And I'm like, this person has so many qualities that I wish and I admire. He connects so well with people. He's so eloquent. He's somebody who's such a great speaker. He's someone who's so comfortable around other people in a way that I've never felt that way. And he was saying, we were having this conversation, vulnerable conversation. And he was saying to me oh man, sometimes I'm intimidated around you because you're so successful, And so that's just, it's funny because it's like it's funny because it's like, you don't know what's going on with other people. You can easily think they are so confident and so successful, they're such on a perfect path, but everybody has their own anxieties and insecurities that they live all the time. Mm-hmm. And even once they figure out how to deal with those anxieties and insecurities, I think I've figured out how to accept them a lot through meditation, through gratitude, through therapy, etc. I have a bunch of tools in my toolkit to be with the person I am. And if I'm anxious, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm anxious. That's okay. I don't need things to be different, but that doesn't change who I am, right? I still have those anxieties. And if you talk to, Buddhist monks, right, who are have meditated for 30 or 40 years, they say that they're still, they still have the human experience of all of this range of emotions, which includes anxiety or sadness or regrets or fears. But they're just much more present and okay with whatever their experience is, and they don't need it to change.
That's really insightful. I love that. And so what was the inspiration behind building Atrium?
Well, the inspiration was I wanted to make a lot of money and more money and have a bigger company than Twitch, which is not a very healthy inspiration, right? That's a very mercenary goal. And so when I started the company, I was like, oh, this is a great business idea. The idea I thought was a very good idea for something that could create a big company. Mm-hmm. But I would say one of the places that it fell down was that I was not primarily motivated for some higher purpose, and so that led to a lot of cascading negative consequences in the company. But it's a learning experience, and I don't have any regrets about it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you see it that way too, because I notice a lot of the personal improvement posts came from the years of Atrium.
Yeah.
So I was kind of wondering what was going on with you. Not in a bad way, but I was kind of curious, like, is Justin feeling okay? Because I'm very conscious of people's mental health.
Yeah.
Conscious that I spend a lot of my time studying people that I always aspire to be, like you yourself or, other people.
Yeah.
So I always try to visualize myself in your position. Like, what are you currently feeling right now? Because I feel behind every action is also a reason why.
Well, it's very empathetic of you, Brian, and I admire that. I think that, for me, it's pretty obvious, right? Like, it was raised a ton of money. We're building this company. There were some things that were working. It's very stressful. And in order to deal with that stress, which I was kind of initially confused about, why am I so stressed? Like, objectively, if this company fails, I have lots of good options, which is actually what's happened, right? Like, the company did fail and I've been able to, I started a VC fund. I've invested in companies. My investments have done well. Like, I'm fine. I'm living like an amazing, beautiful life, but I didn't feel that at the time, right? That was like a conceptual idea. It wasn't like a felt idea. And so, I started looking for like what, I was so stressed. I was like, what can I do to solve this problem? And expressing that externally, most people, like, they're stressed in their startup and they just say, oh, we're doing well, we're killing it. They're not talking about that. I like to talk about it publicly because I just, that's the person I am. And it helps me learn about how to improve and how I feel about something by talking about it publicly and being honest about it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the material from that time, whether it's like, here's how I've been working on, meditating or feeling good, or like all these different practices I'm implementing, or, difficulties I'm going through, or learnings I'm having about like how to be a better leader, and the truth of like how I maybe wasn't a good leader in certain ways before, I'm very honest about that because that's just the way I learn, and so what you saw from the outside is probably exactly what you think, and what you would guess is exactly what was going on, which is like, it was very stressful and I was finding ways to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I saw your tweets recently too about your 10 takeaways from Atrium. And the thing that really made me smile was when you're like, don't start a service company. Because we get a lot of recommendations for Asian Hustle Network to become a service company, but I was so adamant on not doing that. I'm like, no, it's going to give us so much work and stress. Yeah. When I saw that you tweeted that, it just validated a lot of our ideas too, because we base a lot of our decision makings on people like yourself that came before us. Like, we're just constantly learning to see what we can do better, what we can do right, and just keep learning from people like yourself. Because the thing with the tech community is it's not too many Asian leaders out there that we can look to, and you're one of the Asian leaders that we look to, and really appreciate you being so transparent and authentic with that.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Amazing. And so when you were starting out Twitch, did you ever expect it to grow as big as it did? Because, now we have like big corporations live streaming, and, many people are actually making a living off of Twitch.
Yeah, because we talked to other startup founders, and it seems the common theme is, I didn't know it was going to be this big. I always hope it was going to be this big. We just happened to be this big.
Yeah. And many founders, when they're first starting out, they often don't know what the potential is, and they don't know how it's going to turn out. So we'd love to see from your perspective, what was your vision for it, and did you ever expect it to grow this big?
Yeah, there's no way that we expected it to grow this big. We said in the beginning, we actually wrote down what we expected because that was our goal. We said we tried these 2 projects for 6 months, right? And so we said in 2 years, if this is successful, in the best case, it's going to be bigger than GameTrailers.com, which at the time was like 10 million monthly active users. And so that was our goal. And so we said, okay, to get to that, we're going to say we need 15% monthly growth for the first year and 10% monthly growth for the second year. And so that was our goal, is 15% monthly growth for the first 6 months. And we actually blew that out of the water. Mm-hmm. And today Twitch is, I don't even know if they release numbers anymore, but I think the last release was like 100 million MAU. I think it's much more than that now. But that's that. So we touched, it's orders of magnitude bigger than we ever guessed it possible, which was like ever guessed like the best success case would be,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wow, that's amazing. I guess my next question is, I heard in your recent podcast is that you were talking about the importance of having a community, you know, and you're talking about the most ironic thing about like lowering your audience to a target niche is the community that supports your product. So I just want to hear your opinions on like how important it is building your tribe, building your community, building that group of people that believe in you no matter what.
I mean, I think that's everything. You know, for me, the whole purpose of making money and being successful was to try to be more connected with people. And, you know, it's kind of funny because I think a lot of people have this motivation internally, but they don't think about it and really think about it hard because, you know, being rich and successful is not conducive really to the type of interactions where you are really building like a true community. You know, oftentimes people want something from you. They want to like, oh, can you help me with this thing? Which is fine. I'm actually not denigrating that at all. I think it's totally fine to like reach out to people who are successful and try to get help with your project or whatever. But I'm saying it doesn't really move you towards closeness and vulnerability and true connection with other people. And so, you know, I do think it's really like the more you can invest in building relationships with the people around you, like that's really wealth. You know, and that's what makes us feel good as human beings and feel connected and close. And that's, you know, there's like lots of other social benefits and economic benefits to being connected with people. But I think primarily the biggest benefit is really that human beings are social animals and we like it.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that, which is what Asian Hustle Network is all about as well, because we really want to build our community. And we often feel that Asians, they often have to feel like they're silenced, right? Or they're quiet. They stay quiet about their entrepreneurial journey. And for us to kind of create Asian Hustle Network and have people share their entrepreneurial stories and have people relate to other people is what we're trying to achieve in the community as well.
Yeah, I guess for us, like Asian Hustle Network came from a place of like feeling lonely, you know, like I mentioned earlier. Feeling like a lot of people out there feel like they're alone, but also noticing a problem in our society. It's like we don't see that many Asian leaders out there. And when we talk to them, they oftentimes are not promoted to these CEO positions. They create their own damn company, you know? So there's a huge bamboo ceiling that we're trying to solve. And, you know, listen to your story too, because, you know, when we look at you, Justin, the first impression we have is strong, powerful, successful. We want to be like Justin, you know? But the thing is, like a lot of people, including myself, a couple of years ago, don't realize that you are human yourself. Like there's and that's the thing that we're trying to capture in our podcast is Justin's a human being just like all of us. He goes through the same emotions. He has the same struggles, you know, and just to make that part relatable to all our journey. Because sometimes we just don't know where we're going or what we're doing in life. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay. Like everyone has their own journey, but the most important things is the self-belief you have in yourself. Like you believe that you can do it. You know, you block out all the naysayers, you know, everyone has their own different stress. Everyone has their own different problems, but they still find a way to work through it and get to wherever they want to be. And you can do it too. That's the point of our podcast, the point of Asian Hustle Network, you know? And that's why we love having you in the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I want to echo everything that Brian said. And I love that you're just being authentic on this podcast as well. Really appreciate you just being true to who you are, talking about, you know, all the life struggles that you had. And just wanted to reiterate to our listeners, like, you know, Justin is like all of us, you know, and he believed in himself. And, you know, as long as you believe in yourself, you know, you can do it too.
Yeah. And the thing I want to highlight as well is like, even though you might not know it, but you can inspire a lot of people that you don't personally know yet. You know, Justin inspired us. You know, a couple years ago, I was extremely unhappy with my engineering job, and I was looking at a billboard that says Justin Khan. I'm like, one day I'm gonna start a company so I can meet this guy. You know,
there you go.
Inspiration. You know, and you just don't know.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, those are some of the messages that I love to get the most. Is when people ping me on Twitter or Instagram or you know, email me or whatever. And they say like, you know, this one interaction that we had 5-10 years ago led me down this path of like, you know, I started this company or I quit my job and did something, you know, and those are the things that like, that's the reason why I like to do this stuff and like be out there with this. And then the other thing I'll say is, I love that message of, every successful person you might look up to and say, oh, they have a perfect life, or they must have been super confident in the beginning. They go through a journey to get there. And that's really why I want to create my own podcast. The quest is to tell those stories, similar to what you're doing. And it's so funny to see how many of friends of mine, people I know who are famous, successful CEOs of companies, famous musicians, star athletes, they have their own struggle, and they have, nobody starts off as like the most confident, perfect executor in the world. For myself, I went through this, people look at me today and they say, oh, that guy's very confident. He's rich. He's successful. He's got it. He's like, people say, oh, you must be like naturally confident or naturally extroverted. You're very extroverted, but actually, or you're like great public speaker. People always, often tell me I'm a great public speaker. And the funny thing is, like, I didn't start off that way. I was a very shy kid. I was not confident at all when I was younger. And all of these things were kind of learned behaviors by putting myself at the edge of my comfort zone. So even though I hated public speaking, I remember the first, in the 8th grade, or maybe 6th grade, I had to do a presentation for this summer camp. I was a part of it. It was like, you had to read this report or like present this report. And I did the whole thing with this papers in front of my face, so I wouldn't have to see the students, the other kids in the class. I like literally I was like reading it with the paper in front of my face. And today I can go and give a talk and like be out there or whatever. And that has come, it wasn't like overnight. Right. And the way it had happened was I was constantly willing to put myself on the edge of my comfort zone and say, oh, okay, well, I'm not a good public speaker and it terrifies me, but I'm going to sign up for Toastmasters. I remember doing that when I graduated from college, and it's like a professional speaking club. And then I'm going to sign up for like speaking engagements, even though I'm going to hate myself for doing it, the day of, and I'm going to feel horrible and scared. I'm going to just sign up because I know that like, I want to be the type of person who is able to like speak in front of people, and even though I was shy, I wanted to connect with people. So I put myself in the position to talk to people and to connect with people. And to like learn that, like, all of these are skills, right? Nobody's born with, an amazing skills is like a beautiful public speaker. These are things that people practice and get their 10,000 hours. And so you might look at somebody like me who's, got the advantage of having almost 20 years of professional experience now and say, oh, that guy's got it. He's got it. And he must have had it like back then, but that wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm. I love that you bring that up. The whole self-development thing, I love how you explain it, because I definitely think that, there is always room for self-development. And like you mentioned before, you didn't believe in it. And some people do believe like, oh, you can be born with this trait or not. Like you can be born with an entrepreneurial spirit or you're not. You can be born to be disciplined or you're not. And I definitely do not agree with that, because I definitely agree that like, if you think that you need to get to one place in your life, if there's like a gap between who you are today and who you want to become, there is a way to get there. It's not impossible for you to get there, as long as you, put in the work and you work on it every day to get to that position.
Yeah. It's about building frameworks for you to be able to do it, to like improve every day. And it's not saying, like if you set a goal of like, oh, I want to be as funny as Dave Chappelle, you want to be a comedian, you want to be as funny as Dave Chappelle, and then the next day, like you're not, like that could be discouraging.
Yeah.
I think the key is to like set up a structure where you're like, oh, I'm going to improve every day. I'm going to improve. Every day I'm going to write a joke and I'm going to tell a friend a joke. Every day I'm going to practice, right? Like whatever it is. And then eventually you will get there. You just have to start a infrastructure that's going to get you better.
Right. Yeah. Love it. So Justin, we have one more question for you. And that's, what one advice can you give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Well, my advice that I always give, and I think it's true today, is like, you just got to get started. Like if you're aspiring, like the barrier to starting a company is just going lower and lower and lower. It was like pretty low when I started in 2005, but now it's like extra low, like, so anybody can start a company if they want to. I don't necessarily think it is for everybody because it's very stressful. And there's, I think you should be doing it for the right reasons. But if you want to get started, the key is to just start building something and start testing your idea among people who are, potential customers or employees or investors. And, the first step is the hardest.
Yeah, I agree.
Very sound advice. And where can our listeners find out more about you online, and how can they learn more about your podcasts?
Okay. So, I've started, after taking a hiatus from like producing online content for a while, I realized I love doing it. So, check out my podcast, The Quest, on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere else you get podcasts. I'm on twitter.com/Justin Kahn. I'm on Instagram at Justin Kahn and TikTok now at Justin Kahn. So find me all there, and I'm going to launch my YouTube channel at some point soon in the next couple of weeks or whatever. So check them out. Yeah.
Good. We'll add all those links into your show notes.
Awesome.
Cool.
It was awesome hearing your story today. We are so honored to have you on the show, Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to the show.
We would like to get to the top 10 on iTunes, so be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We release an episode every single Wednesday, so stay tuned.
Thank you guys so much.